Good morning, everyone. Hope you had a good weekend. I'm Susan Demas, the executive editor here at Lincoln Square. And joining me today for our look at the week ahead is Sam Osterhout. And we will be going through some of the things that happened over the weekend and a look at what we'll be doing on Lincoln Square this week. So there's a lot of sobering news over the weekend, but I thought we could just briefly touch on a bit of the ridiculous to start out with. Rolling Stone had a story how Trump, in his latest attempt to be petty, is not putting the portraits of his predecessors in a place where anyone can see them in the White House. So if you were hoping to catch a glimpse of Obama or Bush 43 or Bush 41, good luck, because they're above an obscure stairwell, which nobody enters. And while this is really silly, Sam, again, this is just kind of a typical autocratic move where nobody came before Trump, nobody will come after, and he's at the center of everything.
Yeah, I think it goes to, we always say these we say it's an autocratic move. This is a move towards fascism. And those things are true and they sound really scary and powerful, but it's a reminder that all of that is grounded in weakness. The autocrat is afraid and is paranoid by nature, and is ultimately probably the weakest person in the room. A real leader with confidence leads with confidence, and you don't have to hide your predecessors, which is it's a weird thing to begin with. What do you make of it?
I just think that it's somebody who, just has boundless ego. I mean, he basically has like a Trump store in his office, which was showing off last week, to dignitaries, the Trump 28 collection. Again, it's this sort of wink and a nod, but no, I'm really serious. I don't ever want to leave. But yeah, I think also, he's well aware in all of the rankings of presidents that he's very low. And so, this is yet another attempt to bury the truth and to make it seem like he is, extremely powerful and beloved, even though, he clearly is not if you look at the polls.
No, I mean, it's such a weird, dummy thing to do. And it draws attention. I mean, I don't know, if you came over to my house and I had removed all photographs of everyone else and only put photographs of myself up, you would think I had a mental break.
Right.
And obviously it's, I wonder too about, you mentioned, the Trump store, if that move towards, he sees himself as such a businessman. And I wonder if that, if money and the making of money is his only sense of validation, right? Like accomplishments in the world really mean nothing unless they help him or serve to make him feel more liked, more loved, more admired, revered, feared, all of those things. And money is the sort of ultimate measure of that. Right. I don't know. Is that a stretch?
No, I don't think so. Because, long before he was ever in office, he famously was lying about his wealth. He only really became a billionaire after he had all of the benefits of being in office and making money off of it, which, of course, we were supposed to have, breaks on that in our Constitution. But like so much of what Trump has done, the Supreme Court has said, it's okay.
Well, he's like weirdly one of the sort of prime new ager like advocates for, will it and it will come, like he's pretended to be a billionaire for so long and then the universe provided, I guess. That's a sad state of affairs. I think, by the way, speaking of Supreme Court, one thing I've been kind of watching a little bit this week, and I know Joyce Vance had a good piece in her sort of weekly roundup this morning, maybe. but they're deciding on whether or not it was legal for Trump to send troops into LA. Then he's scheduled to have let's see if it's happening. I don't know if it's happening yet, but maybe you guys in the audience can let me know. He's having a press conference scheduled for 10 a.m. Where he's going to talk about potentially invading Washington, D.C.
Right.
So he's jumping over the LA rule, case, which is meant to go from today until Wednesday. And he's just marching straight ahead, potentially. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it seems to be tied in with other news about Trump going ballistic on having to see homeless people in Washington, D.C.
Right.
to the golf course, and ordering via Twitter, or Truth Social or whatever, that they're to be cleared out of the city, and with no thought about these are human beings with basic rights, and what's the point of this, and where do they go? And he made a lot of comments during his first term about basically eradicating the homeless, and I think that was yet another thing that people didn't take particularly seriously.
Yeah.
But he seems to be really offended at the idea of having to see people who are suffering, and that they are cluttering up his beautiful city.
Right.
And again, it is an authoritarian move, as far as, I have the right to take away your basic rights, your dignity, your freedom of movement, because I've decided that you are a group that I don't feel should have the same rights.
Right.
And again, it's targeting people who, some people don't have a lot of sympathy for. That's why, he was complaining so much about the quote unquote, MS-13 gangbangers, as opposed to people who had lived in this country for years legally. And, ICE is rounding them up now. Mm-hmm. A lot of people may not have the most sympathy for homeless people and might say, well, fine, let them do that. But it's a slippery slope, because once you take away the rights of people that you don't really like, it's a lot easier to take away everybody's rights. And, this announcement that's supposed to come at 10 a.m. about how, he's going to be the King of D.C. and take over the government because supposedly crime is out of control and he has no choice. Again, this is just prefabricated. It's another distraction because his poll numbers are terrible because of the economy and his broken promises on the Epstein files.
Yes.
And, again, it's kind of this buildup for his $175 billion police force in ICE that Congress, handed him a blank check for. So, this is what he wants to see in every city going into next year.
It's funny because I think that the fun and games segment that we started with him hiding all the portraits is dangerous, and it's part and parcel of this whole thing. It's all about, everything is about appearance. And I feel like in some ways deploying troops, as he really wanted to do in round one of his administration, it just scratches a lot of itches for him. Mm-hmm. And I think he could say it's about homeless. He could say it's about crime, but crime, by the way, is at a 30-year low in Washington, D.C. right now. And that was stated on a government website, which you better screen grab it, because I'm sure that page will be gone soon. But it allows him to appear to be solving a problem in a strongman way, using violence and a sort of, I think, long forgotten masculinity that seems cartoonish today, at least in today's world, and at least to me. And I think that is perhaps one of the most dangerous things about this, because he's not solving a problem. There's no problem there to solve. And if there was a problem with crime or homelessness, sending in troops wouldn't be the solution.
No.
Right. That's not how you solve those particular problems. But you could replace invading DC, that sentence with stopping the war in Ukraine or deporting migrants or whatever it is, he fabricates a problem and then he tries to solve it with violence.
Right.
And that's the dangerous thing. And whether it's because he thinks it makes him look macho, or I don't know why.
Yeah. And given what he has managed to do to the economy in just 6 months in office, where we have rising inflation, where his bragging about tariffs bring in money, that's money from all of us. We're paying these tariffs, and so that is a pretty hefty tax increase on us. So essentially, he's creating more economic problems. He's creating a bigger homelessness problem that's only going to grow. And so, and rather than, of course, taking responsibility for damaging the economy and, perhaps a growing problem of homelessness is a failure of his economic policies. Again, it's might makes right. I have the right to do whatever I want to whatever groups I deem to be undesirable. And, the fact that he's holding this celebratory press conference is a real indication of where we're at right now, because, it's just dystopian.
Yes. I wonder, as I'm sure he got the required attention, that he needs for himself throughout the 70s and 80s, because he also wasn't under scrutiny in the way that he is today.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when you actively join into an endeavor like the presidency, then you are automatically under the microscope and open for criticism. And I think I've talked about this before. There was a really amazing, I'll think of, it was a Frank Rich piece in 2016, 17, about Roy Cohn, his old fixer, who some regarded as the worst human who'd ever walked the earth. And a really incredible piece. If you can go find it, I still remember, there are a few pieces that you read, long form essays and articles that kind of stick with you. And this was one of them. But the idea was, somebody asked Hillary Clinton during the 2016 campaign, they said, why did you go to his wedding? Like, if you're such a buffoon, why? And she said, well, Bill was speaking in the area, and we got the invite, and we thought it would be a laugh, and he's an unserious guy, and so we went, and it was everything we expected. And then they asked Trump, why did Hillary come to your wedding? And he said, because I called her and I told her to come, so she came. And it's that sort of lack of scrutiny up until 2016 that allowed for this kind of thing. But it's now I think part, the scrutiny of being a president that's causing him to just wig out. that is, you are putting him in a corner, and he will continue to do this. In some ways, I feel like we needed to hold him to account in 1978.
Right.
Or not at all. Just let him air out and burn out.
And that, explains why he has been, so obsessed with controlling the media, because he wants to control the narrative around him. He created a social media company, just so that, a bunch of people could tell him how great he was, because occasionally on Twitter, he would get ratioed. And it's not just him, though. It's like Elon Musk, too. You can see like these extremely powerful people. They have just such runaway egos that the idea of anyone not worshiping them sends them into a tailspin, and they can't handle it. Elon Musk bought Twitter for that reason. Okay, you don't like me, I'm going to make you like me. This is going to be my little toy. And, I do think that there is something to your argument that this is like some sort of warped view of masculinity for Trump, for these guys. And, you can see that with Trump's choices for his cabinet, like with Pete Hegseth, his defense secretary, floating out the idea, oh, we don't need that little 19th Amendment. We don't need women to vote. And, again, this is going to be something that people will not take seriously, because it'll just be dismissed as idle talk until it becomes something very serious, like we see time and time again with the Trump administration. And this is, a powerful idea for extreme far right historians. And I use that term very loosely because, they're not historians in the sense of like rigorous academics, but, it's like the Prager University of historians.
Right.
Right. They believe that the man is the head of the household and his vote should count for the household. And, is it a coincidence that, the clampdown on voting, that Trump has been pushing at the federal level would make it so much harder for women who have changed their names at marriage to vote? In this context, I don't think it is.
No, and I think, Hegseth having tweeted out, retweeted the, whatever that was talking about repealing the 19th Amendment. Trump is a coward surrounded by weak-ass men. This is it. If you have to codify that you are the head of your household, you are not the head of your household. You have such a tenuous grasp on who you are or the world or power. Why is there a power interplay in a household, by the way? That's a weird thing to begin with. And maybe you could say it's traditional sort of 1950s sense of, the nuclear family or whatever, but it's weird. Is there a Game of Thrones style battle in your house between you and your spouse? It's a weird concept and it shouldn't exist, but it has existed on the fringes for so long and it doesn't exist on the fringes anymore. Hegseth is in a real position of power and he's advocating for a family vote rather than, remove the rights of women to vote. Who are we? What happened to you, Pete Hegseth? What happened to you?
And, it's not a coincidence that Hegseth and Trump have a long document history of, brutality towards women in their lives. They walk the walk, and, it's not just a matter of what they personally want to do. They feel like they can impose on everyone else. And, it will be interesting because I can't wait. I've been waiting for this cycle after cycle. I think maybe 26 is it, where you are going to see some Republican woman running for office and saying, yes, I agree, the 19th Amendment should be repealed.
And they'll say it's the only feminist choice, right? They'll couch it in terms, they'll co-opt the left's terms, and it'll be highly cynical and really disgusting. And all of us will call it out. And some Democrats will give very academic speeches on why it's, and Anne in the chat says the appeal is emotional though. We can't fight with logic only. We have to appeal to emotions too. And Anne, that's it. And I think to that end, we also can't just fight with fear. Fear is a really powerful emotion. But hope feels so much better.
Yeah.
Right. And I think there has to be a blend of these of a realistic sense of where we are, but a hopeful vision forward. We've had a couple of really good guests on lately who have talked about, how to rebuilding the democracy as we go forward. Making the case for American power in the world and how it's deeply flawed and yet kind of our only hope. I really like those comments because they're not just reflecting back on the misery that we all feel, but they're, proposing ways forward, however you feel about them.
Yeah, I really enjoyed being able to talk with Washington Post columnist Dr. Shadi Hamid last week. He has a book, The Case for American Power, which is coming out in November. And we've had the opportunity to have a lot of authors on lately. Garrett Graff was on with Stuart Stevens on Friday to talk about his book on the Manhattan Project. And they got into a really fascinating discussion about science being under attack today, learning the wrong lessons from that period of history. But I feel like we have some really great opportunities for those discussions this week as well. So I'm looking forward to that. I know you're going to be talking with Joel Payne in less than an hour, and
Yeah.
he's been a great guest.
He's awesome, and he's he's like he could be a fourth member of the strategy session. He's a Democratic strategist. He's so smart, and he sees, we can talk about, and what we're planning on talking about really is, Texas, Epstein. We'll talk about anything that happens in this, Trump presser if it's happening. Let me know if it's happening, by the way, chat. But we're going to talk about it through the lens of Democrats. Where are the opportunities for Democrats, and which Democrat can capitalize on those opportunities, and how? And I think that's, as we go into, so weird to say, but the 26th election cycle, which is in 18 months ish, it's becoming more and more important. I think that's going to be one of the most fascinating things, is to watch who rises to the top.
Yeah, absolutely. On Wednesday, I'm going to be speaking with journalist and author Erin Carmen about her book. And it's a really personal one about the right to abortion. She happened to be 8 months pregnant when the Dobbs decision came down in 2022 from the Supreme Court, which overturned Roe versus Wade. And her book talks with several women from different backgrounds about their personal stories and what this decision has meant, because a lot of times we view things in black and white, but the reproductive health, first of all, is it's a healthcare issue. Yeah. It's something that affects every woman, and no matter what your choices are or have been, making the ultimate impact of the Dobbs decision has been that it has made getting reproductive health care just more difficult for so many women. There are states like in Idaho where you have trouble finding an OBGYN if you're pregnant. And if you ask John Roberts on the Supreme Court, oh, that's not what I meant to happen at all. But when you start criminalizing healthcare for women, and when miscarriage can be viewed with suspicion, like you've done something wrong, you're driving people out of out of hospitals and out of helping people. So I think that will be a good discussion. We're also going to have another healthcare discussion. I'll be talking with Dr. Rob Davidson. He's an emergency room physician from Michigan who I've known for years. He's the head of the Committee to Protect Healthcare. It's a national group that advocates for better healthcare, which we need more than ever, given Trump's budget bill that is yanking healthcare away from millions and making it more expensive for the rest of us. But the timing of that, it comes at just a horrible incident on Friday at the CDC where there was a shooting. And I think you have that piece from the Atlantic where they talked with workers there who said, just frankly, I'm actually surprised it didn't happen sooner, because when you have all these conspiracy theories, especially around COVID and with vaccines, and RFK Jr. as your health secretary, who has been feeding all of this, it creates an atmosphere where, people will take matters into their own
Yeah.
hands, often in a violent way. And we've been watching this for years, at hospitals where nurses and doctors are being attacked when they're just trying to save people's lives because, people were very emotional and wanted to blame someone, when their loved ones got COVID. And after hearing so much misinformation, they, lashed out. And now, you have the institution that, has been in charge of trying to keep us all healthy and safe and is under attack from within in the Trump administration. You have people who see it as a target of people who, they want to attack. And we're really at an upside down time where we're
Yeah.
at this point in history where we're the most medically advanced country in the world. And yet you have people in power who are peddling like medieval ideas. Like RFK is 3 months away from saying we should all use leeches. Like, we're
Yeah.
back in the dark ages. And sadly, there are just so many people who buy into this.
It's a lot to unpack. And I think the shooting at the CDC is, like they said, it's not surprising. And like we were talking about earlier, all of Trump's militaristic macho bullshit, sending in troops for no reason and solving those problems, it creates this culture of kind of LARPing, of military LARPing. You see these homemade videos of these old men, and they're kind of out of shape, and they're dressed in tactical gear, and they're, turning like this and doing, and like, shoot, it's a little like a Benny Hill episode for anyone who's seen that. But it's so sad because I used to do that too, but I was 8 years old, right? I wanted to be an army guy. And so me and my pals would go, and that's exactly what we would do. But these men never grew up. They never understood why this is silly. And there's something so tragic about being a 50-year-old man and pretending to be an army guy. But it's a logical conclusion of the culture that is built from the top. I think in a lot of pieces I write, I worry mostly about the culture because it has these really sticky after effects that linger. You can repeal policy and you can rebuild departments, and you can refund AID and or USAID and all of those things, but that sort of cultural stuff just sticks, and that's what's concerning to me. So yeah, I think, but also the culture of, it's a culture of banning things like abortion or reproductive care. And I just think about, having kids, going to a doctor because one of them is ill or one of them needs care, and the doctor saying, our choices are limited. And thinking, what are you talking about? Our choices are limited. We're Americans. Mm-hmm. This isn't how we built this place, but our choices are limited. There are options that could save the life of my child, but they're not available to me. What are you talking about? This is the emotional stuff that Anne in the chat was talking about, I think, and Democrats need to put that in real plain terms.
Yeah, I think that one thing that Trump has been very good about doing is appealing to that emotion, that negative emotion, the feeling that so many people have that they've lost something that they're entitled to,
right.
Even if you can't put your finger on it. And this is real because, we had the pandemic. A lot of us lost a lot during that time. We lost loved ones. Our kids lost opportunities in schools. We lost, time with our friends and family. And, I think that he has been very good about, hearkening back to some mythical time when everything was better. And, that's appealing to people. But, we're entering a point where, you and I might feel nostalgic for a time where our kids could get all of their vaccines that they needed, so that they don't get whooping cough and measles. And
Oh my
I
God.
don't want to be nostalgic for that. I want us to keep making progress, and so that we can, find cures for diseases like Alzheimer's and cancers, not go in the other direction. And so, we are losing a lot right now. And, I don't think that the appeal to people is things were so much better, under Joe Biden. People had, their
Right.
criticisms, but we know what we've done right. And let's do things better. Let's look towards the future and build something that works a lot better.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. Instead of saying, what do we need to tear down? Right. We know that. We know we need to tear this administration down. Instead, we ask, what world do you want to live in? And if you're not fighting like hell for that vision, then what are you doing? What are you even doing? And by the way, this is a shameless organic plug, but Lincoln Square has been #1 on the leaderboard of Substack in political Substacks on the political rising, they call it, for the past 3 days in a row. We're number 22 overall. I think we are. I couldn't be happier, but I think it's that all you guys in the chat are why I'm looking down at you at the chat. That's where I keep my chat. But you guys are why. And I feel like what we're really trying to do here is find the source of the story generally, right? We have writers and people who were there when the story happened, and we try to get as close to the eyewitness of the story as possible. And I think that's emotionally telling, and it paints a real picture. I'm really proud of what we've done here, Suzanne.
I am too. And really all of you have helped us build what we have here. We've only been on Substack for 4 months. And so we appreciate that you are finding value in what we do. The guests that we have, the columns that we run, that's because, we hear from you and you say, what I'd like to know more, what's going on, with Trump's policy in Ukraine. I want to know what, tell me exactly what's going on with tariffs, because, he says that he's going to slap tariffs on, then he doesn't. But now all of a sudden everything is rising at the grocery store. And so, we're here to provide good information, not to kowtow to corporate overlords who tell us what we can and can't write. And also it's, building this community in the chat and, with all of you and the relationships that you build with each other, because, that's something that you can't break down very easily. America is a lot of things, but, the community that we build with each other, because we believe in what America is and our democracy, that's one of the strongest bonds that Trump won't be able to break.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. And if he were to break it, and he's trying, we'd be, fucked. So let's not get to that place.
Right.
Well,
but trying to take away freedom from folks who've enjoyed it for 250 years to varying degrees, that's a tall order. That has not been done, before. When you look at, countries like Hungary, they don't have the same history that we do. And so, that's one of our strengths. I feel like our diverse backgrounds, our history, that's our strength and who we are. And I think that's why Trump has to, have these moves like, I'm going to take over D.C., because it's not like everyone's just saying, come on in, take over our cities. No. He has to do it by force, because, this is not something, even if you voted for Trump, very few people voted to say, sure, I want you to be the king of my city.
Yeah. Yeah. No, nobody wants that. Literally nobody wants that. What a disaster. Well, we'll have updates on that coming up. I'm going to go prep for my conversation with Joel. But Susan, it was, I love these Monday chats.
I do too. It's a great way to start the week.
It really is.
And definitely stick around because Stuart Stevens will be on with Simon Rosenberg, and you don't want to miss what their take is on everything going on with Trump over the last week.
Yeah. At some point, by the way, either today, tomorrow, we'll run a Stuart Stevens live on Ukraine as well. And I'm really looking forward to that. So stay tuned for that. Guys, when we repost this, make sure you leave comments in the chat. We love reading them.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, everyone. See you in a bit.